Have you ever felt like your life moves in cycles? You know, that there are these distinct seasons to your growth, your ambition, and even your periods of rest? Well, today we're diving into a really profound idea. What if that personal rhythm isn't just personal at all? What if it's a reflection of a pattern that's woven into the very fabric of the universe? We're looking at the universe as a kind of cosmic mirror.
Just think about it for a second. And I'm not really talking about winter or summer in the literal sense, but the seasons of your own life, of your own becoming. We all go through these distinct phases, right? And each one has its own unique feel, its own purpose.
You know exactly what I mean. There's that period of structure where you're just building your world brick by brick. And then there's this necessary thaw, a time of letting go where all the old patterns start to melt away. And that's usually followed by this incredible creative surge, right? A huge expansion of new possibilities. And then finally, there's that quiet return to yourself, a time of integration where you kind of harvest everything you've learned.
So here's the big question. What if that very same pulse, that inhale and exhale of existence, wasn't just some human quirk, but a fundamental law of how everything works? That's the powerful idea we're going to unpack today.
I want to be really clear here. This isn't just some nice poetic metaphor. According to the source material for this explainer, this is a fundamental structure of reality.
So here's the core idea. Our internal seasons aren't something we made up. We actually inherited them. They were woven into space-time long before there were even minds around to notice them. You can think of this cycle as a kind of universal grammar, the basic rules for how things change.
And here they are, the 4 currents of that grammar. First up is formation, which is like our winter, a time for stability and structure. Then you have loosening, that's our spring, a thaw that brings flexibility. Next is expansion, our summer, a big radiant burst of growth. And finally, integration, which is our fall. This is where we consolidate everything we learned, turning experience into wisdom for the next cycle. You're going to want to remember these 4 steps, because they are the key to absolutely everything else. All right, so now we're going to take that same 4-phase pattern and just zoom out. Because if this rhythm is truly universal, we should be able to see it reflected at every single scale, from the long arc of human history all the way to the life of a single star.
Now, this is a pretty big claim. The source material is suggesting that the rise and fall of whole civilizations isn't just a series of random events. It actually follows a predictable seasonal pattern. History doesn't just march forward in a straight line. It breathes. It moves like a wave.
And just look at how neatly this pattern maps onto history. Winter becomes a structural era, right? A time of stable institutions and laws. Spring is a loosening era, where new, disruptive ideas start to challenge the old order. Summer is an expansive era. Think of things like golden ages and renaissances. And fall? Well, fall is an integration era, where there's social stress, and society has to consolidate itself before the next cycle can begin. Okay, let's zoom out even further. We're going from the timescale of centuries to the timescale of eons. It turns out the life of a star, from the moment it's born to its very last breath, follows the exact same logic. And this just illustrates the pattern so brilliantly. A star starts out as this loosening molecular cloud, that's its spring. Then it ignites into its main sequence, which is like a long summer of just sustained radiance. As it gets older, it enters its red giant phase, a time of internal tightening and swelling. That's its fall. And finally, it settles into its final form, a super stable, dense object like a white dwarf. That's its winter. It's the same 4-step dance, just written in fire across the entire cosmos. So we've seen this pattern in ourselves, in our history, and in our stars. So now let's go to the biggest observable structures in the universe, entire galaxies. This really reframes how we think about these immense structures. They aren't just static islands of light floating out there in space. They're dynamic, seasonal organisms, performing the very same cycle on a scale that is just almost impossible for us to comprehend. They are, in a very real sense, breathing. And again, look, the 4 currents map perfectly. The spring is when the first filaments of gas start to soften and stretch out. The summer is a time of massive starbursts and the radiant expansion of the spiral arms. The fall is when the galaxy's halo starts to cool and matter begins to cluster together. And winter is when the galaxy finally settles into a stable, rotating disk. It's the same rhythm, just being played on a galactic-sized instrument. So what about black holes? Where do they fit in? Well, in this framework, they play a really special role. They aren't just cosmic vacuum cleaners that suck everything up. They are the galaxy's integration organs. They're like cosmic memory wells, compressing all the complexity of everything that falls in, and they anchor the entire system. They are the deepest, most profound expression of the cosmic fall.
Okay, so we've seen this same pattern repeating itself at every single scale we can imagine. But, just observing a pattern is one thing. Understanding why it exists, now that's the real question, isn't it?
Why this pattern? Why these 4 seasons over and over again, from our own minds to the way galaxies behave? Is this all just a massive coincidence, or is there some fundamental law at work here? The source material gives a really profound answer, and it actually draws on an ancient concept to describe a very modern physical principle, ma'at. Now, it's not described as a moral law, but a physical one. It's the tendency of all systems to move along the path of least resistance, to minimize wasted motion. It is, in essence, the physics of coherence. And here it is. Here's that law expressed in the pure language of physics. Delta A equals 0. This is known as the principle of least action. And what it essentially means is that any system, from a planet orbiting a star to a ray of light, will naturally, automatically follow the most efficient path possible. The universe isn't trying to be chaotic. It's constantly trying to find coherence. And our 4 seasons? They're simply the most efficient rhythm for any system to find that balance, over and over again.
So if this one, single, elegant law governs everything from galaxies all the way down to our own thoughts, what does that say about us? Well, this is the point where the cosmic mirror turns, and it looks right back at you.
This is what's called the mirror principle. It suggests that consciousness isn't some random biological accident that just happened. It's a structural inevitability. The universe, through its relentless drive for coherence and efficiency, eventually builds systems that are complex enough to recognize the very patterns that created them. Consciousness is just the universe's way of looking at itself. And this slide just lays it out so beautifully. The inner seasons we feel inside are a direct reflection of the cosmic seasons of space-time. The neurological feedback loops that create our thoughts are the same kind of process as the gravitational feedback loops that shape an entire galaxy. We are, in a very literal structural sense, a small-scale model of the cosmos. And I really want to leave you with this final, profound thought from the source material. We are expressions of a universe that has learned to witness itself. We aren't just bystanders here. We are the mechanism through which the cosmos becomes self-aware. We are the reflection in the cosmic mirror, a mirror that is itself looking right back at us.